Welcome to Life Stories, where we share the journeys of ordinary people who navigate extraordinary challenges. Today's story follows Sarah Adams, a successful interior designer in Boston, who learns profound life lessons after years of feeling unseen and unappreciated by her family. Through betrayal and unexpected support, Sarah embarks on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment, ultimately realizing that true love and family are found in the most unexpected places. Stay tuned as we dive into Sarah's emotional and inspiring journey. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. I had always dreamed of a life where I could escape the narrow confines of my upbringing. Growing up, my family was like a stage set with perfectly crafted facades. But behind the scenes, the cracks were widening, slowly but surely. I often found myself yearning for something more, something beyond the expectations. Beyond the responsibilities that seemed to define who I was. I remember standing by the window of my studio in Boston, staring out at the stark winter landscape. The cold air of the city seemed to seep into the depths of my thoughts. But somehow, there was warmth in my heart. As the snowflakes gently drifted from the gray sky, I looked out over Newbury Street, decorated with Christmas lights and ornaments. The vibrant streets full of people scurrying around, all busy with their own lives. My name is Sarah Adams, and for the last decade, I've been running my own interior design company here in Boston. Over the years, I had built a reputation, established my place in the competitive industry, and created a stable life for myself. Yet, despite all of this, something always felt missing. Something inside me that I could never quite fill. I had made it on my own, relying on my abilities, my grit, and my determination. I had struggled through college, worked part-time jobs, and juggled design studies with a job in the day, never once asking for help. But no one had ever truly asked me if I needed help either. I often found myself wondering if my family ever saw me for the person I truly was. My father, Thomas, ran a small insurance agency in Phoenix, and my mother, Carol, was well known in the local social circles. Then there was Jessica, my younger sister, who had lived a life of luxury and ease, but always seemed to find herself in tumultuous relationships. Divorcing once, then again. On the surface, we were the epitome of a close-knit family. But deep inside, there were emotions unspoken, words unsaid, and expectations that only seemed to grow heavier as I gained success. My family, especially my parents, had always seen me as the reliable eldest daughter. As I became more successful, they started to look at me as their pillar of support. But instead of the heartfelt pride I had hoped for, it felt more like a burden, a constant expectation for me to provide. In recent years, their financial situation had deteriorated, and occasionally, they would ask for assistance. They called it a temporary loan. But I knew better. They never repaid a single cent. And yet, I could never say no. That was the unspoken rule. I was expected to take care of them. Just as I had always done. The day before my birthday, I was sitting in my office, preparing for a big presentation. It was the renovation of the Crawford estate. A high-profile project that could elevate my company's reputation to new heights. My assistant, Martha, walked in with the materials for the presentation, and I smiled, taking them from her. Tomorrow was a big day, but there was a strange weight in my chest. I felt an odd mix of anticipation and dread. The next day, I would turn another year older. And, as always, my family would forget. They would never remember. It wasn't until the phone rang that I realized how wrong I was. "Sarah, it's Uncle Richard," came the voice on the other end of the line. I hadn't spoken to him in a while. He was my mother's brother. A quiet man who had always kept to himself at family gatherings. Yet, there was something about him that made me feel understood. Something about his presence that was comforting in a way I couldn't describe. "Your birthday's coming up," he continued, his voice warm and gentle. "I just wanted to say congratulations. And I've sent you a small gift. It should arrive tomorrow." I felt a sudden surge of warmth, and I thanked him sincerely. My heart fluttered at the thought that, at least one person in my family remembered. One person who actually cared. As I hung up the phone, I sat there for a moment. The weight of the conversation settling in. It wasn't much, but Uncle Richard's small gesture had meant more to me than I could put into words. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel entirely invisible. The next day, everything changed. When my mother called me in the afternoon, I was taken aback. "Sarah," she said, her voice unusually chipper, "we want to make your birthday special this year. We've planned something, a dinner at Lum Zone in Beverly Hills this Friday at 7. It's the finest French restaurant in Boston, and we thought it would be the perfect place to celebrate." I was stunned. My family, who had never acknowledged my birthday before, were suddenly so eager to celebrate it in such an extravagant way. I didn't know how to respond. "Are you sure?" I stammered. "Lum Zone? That's..." I was trying to understand. But nothing felt right. "Of course. We wanted to do something special for you this year. You always work so hard," my mother added. The words felt like a contradiction to everything I had known about my family. Was this real, or was there something else at play here? Despite my doubts, I agreed to join them, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for my family to finally show they cared. But deep down, I knew that this birthday dinner, however lavish, was likely another test, one that I would have to face. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a night that would change everything. The night arrived quickly, and so did the confusion that churned inside me. Despite my reservations, I found myself at Lum Zone, Boston's most upscale French restaurant, standing at the entrance beneath a crystal chandelier that shimmered like an illusion. I had worn a pale blue silk dress, one my mother would consider lovely, and a matching necklace that sparkled under the lights. The coldness outside had seeped into my bones, but I felt something more chilling inside, something that made it hard to breathe. I wasn't sure if I was walking into a celebration or into a trap. The manager, recognizing the reservation, greeted me with an elegant nod and led me to a private corner of the restaurant, where my parents and sister were already seated. The table was set with lavish glasses and an expensive bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket, its presence a glaring reminder of the wealth that seemed to define their world. "Sarah, my girl," my mother's voice rang out, filled with a warmth that seemed almost foreign. She rose from her seat and ushered me to a chair, her smile wide and welcoming. But I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at my insides. Jessica, my sister, stood up next and embraced me in a way that felt overly affectionate. She wore a glittering pink dress, looking more radiant than usual, her lips painted in a shade that almost matched the exaggerated cheerfulness in her eyes. "Happy birthday, Sarah," she exclaimed, her voice laced with an odd sweetness. For a moment, I felt as if I were caught in some strange dream. This was the family who had hardly acknowledged me in years, and now, they were treating me as if I were the most important person in the room. My father, Thomas, stood up too, his face unusually warm and inviting, and kissed my cheek. "It's good to see you. Sarah, sit down. We just opened the champagne," he said, his tone oddly affable. I couldn't help but feel a small surge of happiness. After all, it had been a long time since they had shown me this much warmth. My mother guided me toward the sofa as the champagne flowed and the first course was brought to the table. The conversation was surprisingly pleasant, filled with light chatter about my design company and Jessica's latest dating misadventures. For a brief moment, it almost felt like a real family gathering, and I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were changing. But then, as the meal progressed, lobster bisque, truffle foie gras, and wagyu steak, the familiar unease crept back in. My mother's voice, dripping with sweetness, caught my attention. "You've been working so hard, Sarah. We're so proud of you." Proud? It was strange hearing those words from her. I had spent years proving myself. Yet these words felt so hollow, like a mask she was wearing. Was this the moment I had waited for? Was this the acknowledgement I had craved all my life? The champagne flowed more freely, and I could feel the warm glow of alcohol spreading through me. softening the edges of my doubts. But then, as dessert was served, an extravagant Grand Marnier soufflé, the moment arrived. "Thank you for this, Sarah," my mother said, her voice lighter now, almost playful. "This meal is such a treat. But, we should be thanking you for it." My heart skipped a beat. I looked up from my dessert, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice suddenly feeling too thin. Before I could process her words, the waitress approached with a leather folder. She placed it in front of me, and I froze. My mother's eyes gleamed with an almost cruel satisfaction. "Here's your bill, dear," she said with an unsettling calmness. I stared at the bill in disbelief. It was $850, an amount far beyond the cost of a typical meal. 2 bottles of special wine, expensive cognac, and the finest dishes. I felt my pulse quicken as I understood the implication. The entire evening had been nothing more than a ploy, a setup to make me pay for it all. My father and Jessica burst into laughter. "You're a successful designer now," my father said, his voice thick with irony. "This should be easy for you, right?" The realization hit me like a blow to the chest. I felt my anger rise. But I kept my composure. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "You planned all of this, to have me pay?" My mother's smile never faltered. "You're doing well now. It's only fair that you give back to your family. Don't you think?" she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The room seemed to freeze around me. My mind was racing, my hands trembling as I reached for my credit card, the weight of the moment sinking into my chest. I signed the bill with a forced smile, my family's laughter echoing in the background as if I were invisible. They continued discussing their next drinking party, as if I weren't even there. Something inside me snapped. With a calmness that surprised me, I stood up. "This is the last time," I said quietly. My father, ever the joker, laughed. "Come on, it was just a joke. Don't take it so seriously." "A joke?" I repeated, my voice rising now. "Pretending to celebrate my birthday, only to make me pay for the entire dinner? This is your idea of a joke?" The contempt in my mother's eyes was sharp. "You can't take a joke. We're family, Sarah." My heart shattered as I looked at them, finally seeing them for what they were. The last few years had been a slow revelation. But tonight, everything became painfully clear. This family was never about love or support. It was about using each other. About their expectations that I would always be the one to provide. "I'm done," I said softly. "Don't contact me again." As I walked out of the restaurant, I could feel the coldness of the Boston air bite at my skin. But that chill was nothing compared to the coldness in my heart. The realization hit me harder than anything ever had before. I wasn't just disappointed, I was done. I was done pretending that this family cared for me. It wasn't until I arrived home that the full weight of what had transpired settled on me. The cold Boston air outside did little to cool the fire that had burned in me ever since I walked out of Lum Zone. As I entered my apartment, the silence was deafening. I felt like I had left a piece of myself behind in that restaurant, and there was no way to retrieve it. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of loss that I couldn't shake. I felt as though my entire identity had been tied to my family, even though they had never truly understood or valued me. But somehow, I knew that I was free from them now. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their love. Not if it came with so many strings attached. As I sat down at my desk, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and I hesitated before answering. "Sarah Adams speaking," I said, my voice still carrying the weight of the previous night. "Sarah," came a familiar voice on the other end, and I instantly recognized it. "It's Uncle Richard." For a moment, I froze. My heart seemed to skip a beat, and a warmth filled me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Uncle Richard had always been a quiet presence in my life, the only one in my family who seemed to see me for who I really was. He never judged me, never tried to make me feel less than. In fact, he often looked out for me when no one else would. "I heard about what happened last night," he said, his voice soft but full of understanding. "I just wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" Tears sprang to my eyes as I swallowed hard. "I'm okay," I whispered, not knowing if I was lying to him or to myself. I just don't know anymore." Uncle Richard sighed, and I could almost hear him shaking his head. "Sarah, I've been watching you for a long time. I know what you've been through. And I've always admired your strength. But sometimes, you have to take a step back and see that you deserve more than what they've given you." His words cut through the fog of my confusion. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. "You're right, Uncle," I said softly. "I've been trying so hard to make them proud. But I've never been enough for them. It feels like nothing I do will ever be good enough." Uncle Richard paused, his voice full of empathy. "Sarah, I want you to remember something. You are enough, and you don't need to prove it to anyone. Especially not to people who've never truly understood you." His words stayed with me as the day went on. The pain from the previous night hadn't completely faded. But somehow, I felt a little lighter. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. The emptiness I had been carrying for so long was starting to fill with something new. Something far more meaningful than anything my family had ever given me. The next day, a small package arrived at my door. It was from Uncle Richard. Inside was an old silver photo frame, its edges tarnished with time. When I opened it, I found a picture of him with his late wife. Taken years ago. It was a simple photo. But there was a warmth to it that spoke volumes. There was a letter, too. The words in that letter would change everything. "Dear Sarah," it read, "the most important thing in life is true bonds. You have always been honest and kind. And no matter what the rest of your family says, you are a person worthy of being loved. I know that your family has not treated you the way you deserve. But I want you to know that I see you. And I am proud of you. Believe in your path, and move forward. I will always be with you. In spirit and in love. With all my heart, Uncle Richard." I sat there, holding the frame to my chest, tears streaming down my face. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I felt loved. I wasn't alone in this world. And I didn't need the approval of those who had never understood me. Uncle Richard had given me more than just his inheritance. He had given me the gift of knowing my worth. I didn't need them anymore. The family I had longed for, the love I had craved, had always been within me. And I was ready to move forward. With or without them. Uncle Richard's legacy wasn't just in the things he left behind. It was in the lessons he had taught me. The love he had given me when no one else would. And that was enough. It was time to start a new chapter. A chapter where I was in control. Where I could make my own choices. And where I could build a life that truly reflected who I was. Months passed, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. I immersed myself in my work, pouring my heart and soul into every project. Driven by the lessons Uncle Richard had instilled in me, the Frank Adams Art Scholarship Foundation flourished. And I found a sense of purpose in helping young, aspiring artists who, like me, had dreams they were determined to pursue despite the odds. Each success, each heartfelt thank you from the scholarship recipients, made me feel that the path I was carving was the right one. The pain of my family's betrayal didn't completely fade, but it no longer consumed me. I had learned that family could be defined by more than just blood. True bonds are built on respect, love, and support. Uncle Richard's passing had been a devastating loss, but his wisdom had left an indelible mark on my heart. One evening, as I sat in my office overlooking the city, I reflected on how far I had come. The young woman who had once yearned for approval and validation now stood tall, independent, and confident in her own skin. The love I had sought all my life wasn't in the hands of my parents or sister. It had always been within me, waiting to be discovered. Life was still unpredictable, but with each passing day, I felt more at peace with who I had become. I had learned to trust my own strength and to believe that I was enough, just as I was. And as I watched the sunset sink over the horizon, I knew that my journey was only just beginning. If you want to continue following this life story and more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for new videos.